Hello, everybody. This is Ace coming on for something to think about live. I know that most of you all are probably resting very well, but I just had a thought that I wanted to share with you guys. I know some of you guys are not going to be on live currently to see it, and that's fine. Just go back and watch the replay. But I had a thought. My mother and I was kind of reflecting earlier pretty late this evening, and we were kind of talking about my schools that I went to growing up as a child. And growing up as a child, my mother was a single mother, and she had some particular struggles as a single parent, raising a male child by herself, for the most part by herself. Um, and going through her particular journeys, we had to do a lot of moving around growing up as a child. And so we were just talking tonight, and I said, you know what, did you realize that I went to 10 different schools growing up as a child? And she said, as a woman, struggling to take care of my child. I had to do the best that I can, and I honor her, and her not giving up and still pushing forward and pushing ahead. And so I was just kind of looking over. I kind of went to, I went to like a preschool. Then I went to about 6 or 5 different elementary schools, 2 different middle schools, and 2 different high schools. And so, over the years, what have you, and I'm just telling a little bit about my story. So there's a point to what I'm getting to. So kind of bear with me as I kind of journey along, and I'm not going to be long, but I was, growing up in school because of bouncing around or what have you, and going from school to school or what have you. My grades wasn't that well. I wasn't really applying myself to learning. I wanted to be like a class clown, and hated reading, hated math. It just was really not really focused or what have you. My grades was very poor. Me and my mother was kind of laughing, talking about how she caught me one time throwing my homework away. I had a whole bunch of homework in my backpack, and there was this dumpster right at the entrance going into our apartment complex where we lived, and I was trying to throw my homework in the trash and lift the lid from the big garbage bin and throw it in there. And it was so windy that day that it blew my papers out of my hand, and it blew my homework all over the street. And my mother so happened to be standing on the patio on the of this building, and she was hollering and screaming at me like, "You get all them papers up and bring every piece, and if you got to get in that garbage can," so on and so forth, blah blah blah. And of course, in my adult life, it was quite hilarious, but it was a part of my journey because I really did not like homework. And so over the years, I was labeled as with a learning disability. An LD student. I was in speech classes. I had particular, tutors or teachers for people that was either a problem child or having a learning disability or what have you. Working with them, and some of those, one in particular, she's actually friends with me on Facebook, was actually one of my favorite teachers. And giving honor to Mrs. Claire, thank you so much for being a part of my journey. And so, growing up, I really wasn't applying myself, and so of course that would bring some sort of levels of frustration to my mother and things of that sort, even to the point that it spilled over into extended families. And then, when they're trying to help you with your homework and being called, dumb ASS and stupid ASS and all this stuff. And this is not to dishonor anybody. Let me make that clear. This is a part of my journey. And so, having this put on you, and looking at the homework and looking at the work and just staring at it and not really trying to figure it out. I would just stare at it, and or I hated reading aloud because I was a slow reader, and hated public speaking and all that stuff, right? And so, growing up and dealing with this all throughout the 10 different schools that I went to. And so, when my last high school, when I was a junior in high school, my guidance counselor told me mid-semester, she said, if you don't get your act together, you're going to be repeating your senior year. And I was like, oh, absolutely not. I'm not going to stay here. And now also what I forgot to mention, in third grade, I was actually held back. Now, from what I remember, now this might not be a total correct story, but from what I remember, because of the moving around and moving in mid-semester or what have you, because of the curriculum difference from the school that I was at previous to where I went to, they didn't feel that because I wasn't grasping it, they felt like, okay, well, we would have them repeat the third grade or what have you. So I ended up being held back in the third grade, which of course later in life, growing up, you're older than some of the kids in your school. I mean, your grade level, and you kind of feeling some kind of way. And then you telling people you got held back, or what have you, was somewhat of an embarrassment. Right. And so anyway, fast tracking back up to high school, I got to the point that I said, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and knuckle down and get into my work and figure out some classes or whatever that I can do that I can excel at so that I could be able to graduate on time. And I ended up graduating with 2 additional credits. So I said all that to say this is that, as you read in my topic, it says, I am not your label. I know who I am. And why am I talking about this? As me and my mother were talking about, reflection of my schooling, I just started to think about, my history and how, I could have easily been, a person that could have ended up in jail, could have ended up in gangs, could have been, a drug dealer, could have been, dead. A lot of things could have been because of me not really applying myself or allowing what was said to me to filter into my life so much that it was a part of my decision making growing up into adult life in that regard. And I think it probably came once I received salvation. I can't really think, but I think that's probably when it came, because I actually received salvation in middle school. And I think the more that I started learning about God, and the more I started understanding who I am, I think that I believe that the labels and the things that was placed upon me growing up as a child, and you're gonna be like your daddy, and you're gonna be like this, and you act like this, and because you were raised by your mama, you're gonna be this and you're gonna be that. And so I growing up, and then I end up coming into an understanding of who I am, and then I start becoming passionate about things that I love to do, and becoming a creative, and the more and more I started to experience life and beginning to gain identity, the labels and the things that people have spoken over my life, the word curses and the witchcraft and all of that stuff begins to fall off. And it begins to, because it's like, there comes a point in your life when you realize that you don't have nothing to prove to anybody, regardless of whatever anybody has said or spoken or decreed over your life or labeled you as, based on their level of assumption. You have to come to a point in your journey that you're not going to live up to the expectations of somebody else's label. They could have called you, you're gonna be broke, you're gonna be stupid, you're gonna be gay, you're gonna be lesbian, you're a faggot, you're a sissy, you're a punk, you all these things that they've labeled you. But I'm sharing this because I want you to reflect on your life, because I looked at my life and I had a moment, because for one, I am appreciative of the journey. Why am I appreciative of the journey? Because it put fuel to who I am today. I'm not on here trying to prove myself to anybody, or what have you. I'm not trying to seek validation or approval in that regard from anyone. I am very secure and who I am and what God made me to be. But that comes over time. And I think that it comes over time. Then when you've heard and people have spoken so much stuff over you that it transforms from being the thing that angers you because people have spoken these things over your life. I used to get mad at the drop of a dime because people used to call me stuff. I never forget as a child that we had a situation that we had to live with family, and that was probably one of the torturous times of my life, to the point that I would have nightmares about living in that particular place and time, and or being in that particular region or property, if you will. And because it's so tormenting to me as a kid. And my mother would tell me, you're bottling up this anger or what have you, it's going to make you sick. Well, I didn't have an outlet. It was like I was getting it left and right, and it didn't matter. Every day it was always something. And so and I'm grateful that I didn't, that those things didn't kill me. It didn't put me in a situation that I could have killed myself. That if anything, it just made me stronger. When you learn that you can endure regardless of what people call you or say about you, that you can stand strong regardless of whatever they think that they know about you, and they won't even take the time to get to know you. It's really interesting. But all of this, in order to overcome labels, you have to come into identity. You got to know who you are. You got to know what God has made you to be. You got to know what you're destined to be. You got to know what's ahead for your future and what you're destined. Thank you guys for coming on. I can't see any of your comments or anything like that because I'm actually not looking at it directly on my live. But thank you. I see it's like a few of you guys on, and I hope you're being inspired. But going through those processes, it fueled me. That at first I used to seek validation. Me and an apostle friend of mine was talking about sharing our ideas with so many people before it's time, because we were trying to seek validation. We're trying to get people to get on board with us and say, you know what, that's a good idea. Yep, that's good. Oh, you're doing a good job, because we was not getting it elsewhere. And so when you get past that part of your life that you don't need validation, you don't need approval, you don't need backing, you don't need no amen corner, but you can go because you are very secure in who you are. You already know where you're headed. You know where you're going. Then when people put labels on you, when people say that you're not good enough and you're not worthy and you're not qualified, that stuff will roll off your back like water off a duck's back. But then here's the thing too, for some of you all that have applied these labels to your life, some of you all have allowed these labels to be the very essence of who you are. You're fighting so hard to prove that this is not what I'm going to be. And nope, I'm not going to be like my daddy. Nope, I'm not going to be like my mother. Until you find yourself being the very nature of who they are. And so, I wanted to come on because, I was having a simple conversation with my mom, and I was just kind of going over the schools and the areas. And I was like, yeah, I remember, I put up pictures of old places that we lived at, because I was just thinking about that, because this is a part of my journey. And the journey that I went through is for the making of who I am today. Do not, the Bible talks about despise not the day of small beginnings. Well, despise not even your past, because everything about your past, even the hurtful things that has happened in your past, is to make you into what God wants you to be. Yes, oh yes, I know that sounds kind of like why would God want you to go through some of the stuff? Some of y'all have been hurt and abused and molested and all kinds of things, and of course nobody would want that for anyone. But at the same time too, It was meant to come through part of your journey because it was a part of your ministry. It was a part of your business. It was a part of your making. It's a part of your fuel. It's a part of your drive and your determination. And it adds to where you're going in life and who you are. And that's why you don't give up so easily. That's why you can smell certain things from afar, because you've already experienced it. You've already been through it. Doesn't mean that you've accepted the label that somebody's placed on you. You use those negative things. You use those experiences to the drive and your motivation and your focus. I give another example of my story. I've experienced homelessness in a couple of times in my life, in my childhood life, and even in my adulthood life. And those things it was not easy at all. But the appreciation for the things that you have. I just was literally talking to my mother earlier today, and this earlier in that same part of the conversation about one of the shelters that we stayed at, and we are grateful that we came through that, because if it wasn't for God allowing that to be created, we wouldn't have had a place to stay. So, all these things are meant for a reason. All these things, the things that we go through in our journey is for our making, and for you to come into identity, to know who you are. So I just want to kind of come on and just share this really quick. I know, like I said, it's 1:30 in the morning here on the East Coast. I know you guys are in different various parts of the world, but I just wanted to come on and encourage you to not live up to the label, the negativity labels, even some positive labels. Because some positive labels might be trying to confine you into a box of somebody else's expectations. You don't know what I'm talking about? Let me give you a better example. Your parents might have wanted you to go to school to be a lawyer, or to be a doctor, or to be something in a particular field of study, but your passion is in music. Your passion is in the arts. Your passion is to be a curator. Your passion is to do something else directly opposite of what was put on you because of what their desires are. Doesn't mean that was a bad thing. It mean that they want to put you into a career path so that you can have better for your life, and that's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time too, you miss who you are. You miss what you could be, trying to live up to somebody else's label or standards. And so it regardless of whatever the label it is, good or bad, when you know who you are and you know where you're headed, you realize that I'm not going to live up to your labels. Again, I've had so many things spoken over my life, or what have you, from childhood even into my adult life, and I refuse to live up to the labels, to the lies, to the assumptions of what people think that they know about me. I'll say it like this. Anybody that you've heard something about, or you think you know about, or you see somebody like, it's something about them I just don't like. I encourage you to take a second to just have a quick conversation with them. You could just say, hey, how you doing? How's your day going? And get to know them before you label or assume something. I'm going to say this last thing before I go. There was a pastor, yes, a pastor, an apostle at that. He came and spoke at our church during an anniversary of one of the churches I used to be a part of. And his voice was so annoying sounding to me. He sounded so arrogant. He promoted all of his products for a whole half hour before he spoke the word. I was so turned off. I was just like, who is this dude? He coming in our house and he acting like this or whatever. And then he would change the musicians around and was just like, it was like coming in somebody else's house and rearranging their furniture. It's like, wait a minute, like, what are you doing? And so at that moment, I was very, very turned off. And then some months later, there was something else that was going on, that we were still affiliated with the same leader. And what was going on in that atmosphere was actually orchestrated by his ministry. And so I was like, man, if this was a church, I would join, right? And so didn't realize that it was this apostle. And then I end up finding myself at this man's church for about 8 months, getting some deliverance, get some impartation, getting some things that I needed from God. But if I would allowed my assumptions about this individual, I would have missed out on my level of deliverance. And so, I'm saying that because we can make assumptions about people and won't even take the time to get to know them. You won't even understand who they are because you just look at them and they just look a certain way, or they just and you just make all these assumptions and label and all this stuff about people, and you didn't even take the time to even say, "Hey, how you doing?" And you might find out that the person, that the countenance that they have on their face or their demeanor is probably because they just had a bad day. And maybe you could be the one to inspire them. And you might find out that that might be the person, that might be the connection to something that you need in your life. Or you might be the connection that they need in what they need in their life. And so stop labeling people. Stop making assumptions about people, thinking that you know them just because you looked at them, because you heard something about them. I tried to stop doing that a long time ago. Then once I heard something negative about a person, I'm like, okay, well, I'll find out for myself. And then I'll get to know that person. I'll be like, you know what you thought about that person is not even. And maybe that was just your experience. Your experience is not going to be my experience. And so, with all that being said, or what have you, I just wanted to come on and encourage you about that, that you're not somebody's label, but you have to make that decision that you're not somebody's label. I'm not anybody's label, and I don't have anything to prove. I know exactly who I am. And as I'm going along in my journey, you will see that. I don't have to prove it. You will see it as I go. Follow me as I follow Christ. Follow the Christ in me. Don't follow the assumption of what you think you know about me. Follow the Christ in me, because we all have our journeys and we all are meant to lead somebody at some particular point in our life, or to encourage somebody, or to inspire somebody at some point in our lives. And you don't want to be behind the assumptions of what somebody else said about you and miss that opportunity because it's like, oh, well, this person is a liar, this person is this person is that. So again, thank you guys for coming on. I just want to come on in this early morning to just share this thought, because like I said, I was having this conversation with my mother. It wasn't about this full thing, but we were talking about the schools, and I just started to look over my life and those processes and the labels and what people have said and extended family have said and friends or what have you, and all this stuff or what have you, that I am nothing of what I was labeled to be. Nothing. I am nothing of what I was deemed to be, or what what I endured as a child. I'm none of that. But I'm a better person, regardless of whatever was said. So thank you guys for listening. I hope that inspired you. I hope it encouraged you. I hope I gave you something to think about from a different perspective, and ponder on that in your sleep, that you're not anybody's label, and to know who you are, know who he made you to be, and know what you're destined to be. Thank you guys, and you guys enjoy the rest of your night. Kingdom blessings.